Did you know that something as simple as salt can have a deep spiritual meaning and even be considered a divine weapon? It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But what we're going to reveal today will completely change your perspective on this common ingredient. What does salt have to do with eternal promises and spiritual battles? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover goes far beyond the kitchen. It's easy to overlook salt because of how common it is in our everyday lives. But have you ever wondered why salt is specifically mentioned in the Bible? What makes it significant enough to be used as a metaphor for something far greater than its role in the kitchen? More importantly, how could something as ordinary as salt be considered a spiritual weapon? Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, your perception of salt will be completely transformed. Let's start by taking a journey back in time, to a place few of us regularly visit, the Old Testament, specifically the book of Leviticus. Now, I know what you're thinking. Leviticus might not be the most exciting book for casual reading, but hidden within its detailed laws and instructions is a fascinating symbol: salt. In Leviticus 2 verse 13, we find God giving a very specific command. Season all your grain offerings with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. Add salt to all your offerings. At first glance, this might seem like just another ritualistic instruction, but did you catch that? God refers to a covenant of salt. Why would God mention salt? And what could this possibly mean? Here's where things get really intriguing. In ancient times, salt was much more than a simple flavor enhancer. It was incredibly valuable. Wars were fought over it, people were paid in it, salt was literally a currency. But beyond its material worth, salt had the unique ability to preserve. It could prevent food from decaying, giving it the power to endure. In the context of the Bible, salt wasn't just about keeping food fresh. It symbolized something eternal. God's command to include salt in offerings wasn't random. Salt became a symbol of an unbreakable promise, a covenant between God and his people that would last forever, unchanging, just like the nature of salt itself. Now let's break this down. A covenant, in its simplest form, is a sacred agreement, a divine contract. It's the most profound form of commitment between God and humanity. And the fact that God chose salt to represent this covenant is monumental. Salt, in all its purity and endurance, became a perfect metaphor for something eternal and unspoiled: God's promises. Think about it. Salt doesn't spoil, it doesn't fade, and it doesn't lose its power over time. It preserves. So when God uses salt to symbolize his covenant, he's saying that this promise is meant to last, not just for a few years or a lifetime, but for eternity. How powerful is that? And it doesn't stop there. In Numbers 18:19, God takes this idea even further. He says, "Whatever is set aside from the holy offerings the Israelites present to the Lord I give to you and your sons and daughters as your perpetual share. It is an everlasting covenant of salt before the Lord for both you and your offspring." Everlasting. Perpetual. These are not casual words. God is saying that this covenant, represented by salt, is designed to last forever, not just for the people of ancient times, but for all generations to come. It's a promise that transcends time, space, and circumstances. But why salt, you may ask? Why not something seemingly more precious like gold or silver? Here's where it gets really interesting. Unlike gold, which can be melted down and reshaped, or silver, which can tarnish, salt is stable. It's consistent, unchanging, and when pure, it remains that way. In other words, salt is the perfect symbol for God's promises: steadfast, enduring, and trustworthy. And here's the most fascinating part. This isn't just some ancient tradition that has lost its relevance. The concept of a covenant of salt has profound implications for us even today. Think about it for a moment. In a world where so much is fleeting, where nothing seems to last, the idea of an everlasting, unbreakable covenant is incredibly comforting. If God's promises to us are like salt, preserved, unspoiled, and eternal, it means that no matter how uncertain the world may seem, his word remains steadfast. God's covenant isn't something that can spoil over time. It's preserved forever, and we can depend on it. Isn't that an incredibly reassuring thought? Now here's something that might blow your mind. Salt wasn't just valuable for its preservative qualities. It was also incredibly scarce and fought over. Wars were waged for control of salt resources, and people were paid in salt. That's actually where the word salary comes from, the Latin word sal, meaning salt. So when God uses salt as a symbol, he's not choosing something trivial. He's selecting something that people of the time would have recognized as both invaluable and essential. In a sense, God is saying that his covenant is as essential to life as salt was to survival. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about one of the Bible's most dramatic and symbolic uses of salt: the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. These infamous cities were so corrupt, so morally decayed, that God decided to destroy them. Yet, before the destruction, God sent 2 angels to warn Lot, the one righteous man in the city, to flee with his family. The instruction was clear: don't look back. But as they ran, Lot's wife, for reasons we can only speculate, looked back at the city, and in that moment, she was turned into a pillar of salt. Why salt? Of all the things she could have turned into, why did the Bible specifically mention salt? This is no random detail. It's packed with layers of symbolism. In this context, salt represents judgment. Lot's wife wasn't just looking back at a burning city. She was looking back at sin, corruption, and everything God was wiping away. Her transformation into a pillar of salt was not just a punishment. It was a lasting monument to the consequences of disobedience. She became a preserved reminder of what happens when you cling to the past and ignore God's commands. And yet, even here, the symbolism of salt takes on another layer. Salt, as we've discussed, is a preservative. So in a way, Lot's wife became a preserved symbol of judgment, a frozen moment in time, standing as a warning to future generations. But salt is also a purifier. Throughout the Bible, salt is used in rituals to cleanse and purify. In ancient times, it was believed to protect against evil, to heal wounds, and to purify water. So in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, salt not only represents judgment, but also purification. God was cleansing the land, ensuring that what remained was pure and untainted by sin. This dual nature of salt, preserving and purifying, is echoed throughout the Bible, and it serves as a powerful reminder of God's promises and judgments. Salt can preserve life, but it can also preserve the consequences of our actions. It's a potent, multidimensional symbol that shows up again and again in the most profound moments of Scripture. Jesus himself referred to his followers as the salt of the earth in Matthew 5 verse 13. At first glance, it might seem like a simple metaphor, but the layers of meaning here are extraordinary. Salt influences everything it touches. Just a pinch can change the entire flavor of a dish. In the same way, Jesus was telling his disciples that they were meant to influence the world around them. They were to be that small but powerful presence that prevents moral decay, preserves goodness, and adds meaning to life. But there's more. Jesus didn't stop at calling them the salt of the earth. He also added a warning. If salt loses its flavor, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. This is a sobering reminder that, while salt is powerful, it can also lose its effectiveness if it becomes contaminated. For believers, this is a call to stay true to our purpose, to remain pure in our intentions, and to keep our spiritual integrity intact, no matter what. In the end, salt in the Bible is far more than a seasoning or a preservative. It's a symbol of God's eternal covenant, his righteous judgment, and his purifying power. It's a tool for spiritual warfare, a reminder of divine promises, and a call to action for all believers. Whether in ancient times or today, salt remains a potent, powerful symbol of faith, preservation, and divine commitment. Thank you for sticking with us through this deep dive into the hidden truths about salt in the Bible. If you found this video enlightening, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Your support means the world to us. God bless you all, and may we all strive to be the salt of the earth in everything we do.